Hey there, today's tutorial will be a bit longer. We're going to cover everything you need to know to get started with Affinity Publisher version 2. I'm going to use a desktop version on my Mac. It's a very similar experience on Windows and kind of similar on iPad as well, with few features missing. Alright, so here we are. I'm on the Create New Document screen. That's where we need to start. Setting up a document in Publisher is very important. It's way more important than in Affinity Designer or Affinity Photo. If you create a document correctly, you can avoid headaches. So if you already know the size, bleeds or margins, that would be great help. You can ask your local printing house if you plan to use the service, or you can simply check out your printer in your office or in your house if you plan to use your own printer. I know the most popular paper size in States, that's the letter paper, but in Europe and here in Asia we use A4 very often. So be sure that you select the correct size for your publication. In my case, I will select A4, something that I can print out on my local printer. As you can see, by default, your document will be set up in 300 dpi dots per inch. That's very good. We need 300 for printing. That's the general rule of thumb. So keep that like this. Go to Pages tab. We can have facing pages. If you plan to put it as the booklet, you can switch this off and you will have experience more similar to Affinity Design when you got those artboards. Let's keep the facing pages to get this booklet vibe. All right, so we can work with that as default. Starts on the right side, number of pages, so we can set up how many pages do we need. Don't worry, we can remove or add pages later as well. Color, if you want to print it out, you need to keep it as cyan, magenta, yellow, black. Margins, that's something that will depend on your printer or your printing provider as well. I will make them a bit smaller, so I will go for 20 all around and 25 from the bottom. Okay, bleeds is this area kind of outside the page. This is the area that the professional printing house will cut out while they are printing your pages. Why we need the bleeds? Let's say you add a color in your backdrop, so your backdrop is blue. Imagine that the cutting machine is misaligned half millimeter, and then you can see the white color of the paper next to that blue color. It's not really nice. So that's why we need to print out extra color all around the publication. In this case, 3 millimeters, and then they will cut them out. And even if the machine is just slightly misaligned, it will be still alright because we print out like extra backdrop all around. So that's a bleeds, and also you need to confirm that with your printing house, and for the local printing, for printing on your like home printer, you usually don't need to even use bleeds. All right, let's click create at the bottom right corner. And here I am in my document. Everything is as we set up. We got margins inside and bleeds kind of outside the document. All good. Now I can simply press and hold spacebar to pan the camera around. That's the easy way to move around this long document. You can also jump between pages using the page menu on the left. It is, I just double tap on the page and jump to that page. If you want to manually zoom in and out, I like to use the command plus, command minus method, the old one. Command minus to zoom out, command plus to zoom in. There's of course the view menu at the top, when we can also zoom in and out using the options here. Zoom in. Okay, before we jump forward, I would like to take some time with the tool panel on the left. So let's simply check out all of the tools, all right? The first tool on the list is the move tool, so let me just draw something quickly so we got something to move around. So don't worry about drawing yet, let's just grab the Move tool, the first tool on the list. The Move tool allows us to move the objects around. We can also use this tool for applying rotation. Try to hold Shift and you will see it's now jumping 15 degrees all around. The Move tool can be also used to transform this object, so I can push it down, drag it all the way up like this. So for transformation and for moving objects, that's our Move tool. If you want to undo your recent changes, simply press Command or Ctrl Z. There's a nice trick that we can use with the Move tool. If you press Command down, you can make a duplicate instead of moving the object. So using Move tool, but you press Command or Ctrl down, and this way you can make a duplicate. Very handy. If you want to delete object, click on that object and hit delete on your keyboard, like the backspace key. Alright, we can also delete the object by deleting the layer that the object is on the right side from the layer panel. Just click this trash bin icon and it's gone. Let's undo. I still need this object to show you the second tool. Before that, I will convert this shape into curves, so into vector. Alright, now moving to the second tool. It's very similar, looks a bit like the Move tool, but it's white, and we call this Node tool. Node tool is not for moving the entire object, but for moving those little nodes, that kind of the construction points of each shape. So with the Node tool, you can customize your shape. You can click on the line to add new nodes. You can click and pull the line to make it curvy. You can click on the sharp node like this one, go to the top and make this smooth node. With the smooth nodes, you may notice those control anchors that we can pull to adjust how curvy is the line. If you got fundamental understanding of vector graphics, this will be really easy to grasp. It's the very same node tool that any vector program like Affinity Designer or Adobe Illustrator will give you. So it's available here in Affinity Publisher as well. The third tool on the list, that's a frame text tool. When you click on it, don't just click on the artboard, click and hold to draw that frame. So we got frame and you can paste or type the text. For now, let's fill it with the placeholder text. So I will go to the text menu and insert filler text. All right, let's zoom out a bit. We can use Move tool to scale this. All right, let's say I want to draw a new text frame over here. But I don't want to fill it with new text. I want kind of the text from this frame to continue into this one. We can do that very easily. So select this one, see this little arrow here? Click on that. And now I can highlight the next text frame. So the text from here will follow to the next one, to the next one. Very handy if you're doing newspapers or books. You got really long text. You paste it once in the first frame and then you simply link different frames together so the text will flow across your publication. I select the second one and my text flowing from this one to this one. Take a look. It's continuation of the very same text. Of course, right now we got just a filler text, so that's not that important, but we are preparing this document for the future publication. So now if you just paste your text to the first frame, it will flow to the second one. If you prepare the third one, it will flow to the third one, etc. So that's how you can draw text frames, and that's how you can also link them together so the text will flow between them. Keep in mind, we got all of the stock default text settings here at the top, so we can change the font. Take a look, I changed the font only of the first one, but because we linked them together, the font changed across both. We can change the size of the font. We can create several different styles that you're going to use across your document, like we do in Microsoft Word or other word processing software. If you click this letter A, you will have a character options on the right side when we can go into certain features of the character. Like we can modify the position and transformation, so we can make the space between lines or between letters a bit different based on your properties. So we can click that up to modify this to be a bit smaller, or we can make this a bit larger. We can move the text line. We can make this distance between text minus 15%, or we can increase that to be in plus, so we got more space between letters. All right, so feel free to customize your text using the character menu. There's a typography section, a language section. Unfortunately, the Affinity Publisher will not support all of the languages. If you're using English, you are safe. If you're using something like English, Spanish, you're all right. But for languages written from right to left, I think there's a huge problem with that, with supporting those languages. All right. And we got some optical alignments at the very end. Okay, so here are our text frames. Some say that's the most important part of the program, because in documents created in Affinity Publisher, usually we work with text. So we need to set up correctly text frames and let the text flow from one to another. Keep in mind, you can separate one frame into several columns. By default, you got one column, but you can change that at the top here. So I split the first one into two columns. So you don't need to manually draw columns. I just split the first one into two columns. It still counts as the one text frame. If you click on those arrows, you will see the features that didn't fit at the top here. This will depend on the size of your screen. You can convert it to curves. What will happen after that? Now my text is no longer text. Each letter is a vector shape, so it's a very drastic operation that I do not recommend you to use if you don't have some higher purpose in that. Now I cannot edit that text anymore. So let's undo. All right, we are back here and we are in the text mode. So all correct. That was just a third tool on the list. Let's check what's next. The next tool is a proper table tool. If you click on that, you will be able to draw a table. From here, you can adjust how many columns or rows you need just by grabbing and pulling and pushing this area, those two arrows at the end. You can also modify a font inside your table. You can change your table properties. Take a look, there's a table option, top right corner, when you can modify properties like adjusting fill or stroke for your table. So fill is the color inside your cells, and the stroke, they are the lines. All right, if you see that, it will look familiar to Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word again. It's a really easy to grasp concept here. All right, what next? There's one more button, table format at the end. If you want to create some table formats and then reuse them, that would be a great place to store them. All right, so we can save formats. As default, we can import, export formats. So if you set up one table, format everything nicely as you like, you can store that here. So you can save as default, and then you can reuse it across your document. Very handy. All right, so that's the table tool. The next one, that seems like a text tool again, huh? This one is for headers, for short text, like one line of text. Oh wait, it's so huge now. Let me just change that by modifying the size of the font at the top. I'm kind of outside my artboard now because what just happened. If you feel lost, you can press Command 0. And we are back to the page. Nice trick. Remember, Command 0 or Control 0 on Mac. Alright, so that's the text that we use for headlines for short text. It's a bit different than that frame text we used before. And again, we got the very same properties at the top. Below that, you can find a pen tool. Pen tool is the dedicated tool for drawing custom shapes. So if you need a shape like rectangle, square, triangle, there are tools for that. You don't need to draw it by hand. But if you got some custom blob to draw, use the pen tool. If you click and hold, you can make a curvy line. If you simply click, 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 you will make a straight line. This tool, it's maybe a bit frustrating at first. It's required some practice. Alright, so we can use pen tool to draw any custom shape we need. But if you need some standard shapes, just use the shape tool below the pen tool. When we got rectangles, we got ellipse, and when you're drawing the ellipse, if you hold shift, you will get nice 1-to-1 proportion. Keep in mind, there are many shapes to select, more than in similar programs. So we got stars, we got heart shapes, and some of them comes with smart controls. So let's say you're doing the comic book using this speech bubble shape. Can you see those orange points? There are the smart controls that we can use to modify the shape. So feel free to use smart controls to change the shape. What if you want to change the color of the shape? Easy. On the right side, we got this color panel. How about the outside color, the outline color, like the stroke around? Yes, we can set this up from here and then go to the stroke properties when you can change how thick the line should be. From here, you can also apply the dash line if you like. If you want more like comic-like look, we can even apply some pressure, so it's more like hand draw. Let's click on the pressure line. And we can apply some pressure like that, so the line is not even across it. As you can see, like someone used the pen to draw it. Nice. Keep in mind, you can use the move tool, the very first tool we learned about, to rotate and stretch any shape you want. The fill color and the stroke color, it's at the top as well, so you can change it from here quickly. If you're working on your publication, you may want to insert some pictures. You could try to drag and drop an image, like I just did, and it seems like working. But that's not what you would say a proper way. If you got multiple images spread across hundreds of pages, just dragging and dropping will not do. If you're doing something short, or maybe that's your very first project, you are not sure how to operate in the software, that's alright. Don't be too serious about it, but let me show you a next tool that will help us to set up a space that can be used to insert images later. So the next tool is called Picture Frame Rectangle tool. If you use that, you are kind of creating a space for the image. Then you can click on that space and replace image to put the image in. Alright, the image is in, but I can still modify this one. And that's the cool part of it. So we can still modify the size, even the shape of it, and we will not destroy or change the image because the image is kind of linking from outside the program. Okay, keep in mind we can move the image inside that frame as well. And in any given moment you can click replace image again to get rid of it and put a new image in. I still got this border from the previous shape. You can keep that as well, so we can keep the border if you like. We can put the border inside or outside, but you can simply click the transparency color to get rid of the border completely and just focus on the image. Alright, and there's also a next tool with the same purpose called Picture Frame tool, but that's the ellipse tool. So if you want to put your picture inside the ellipse. We can replace image. And now we got our image inside the ellipse, right? So you may think, all right, so it seems like we've got only two choices here, square or elliptical pictures. That's not true. Even though we got two options like that, we can literally grab any shape tool. So let's go with the hard shape tool. Draw this hard shape. We got a shape now, but we can convert that. If you right click on that shape, you scroll down a bit, we can convert this into both a picture frame when we can put the image in, or a text frame when you can put the text in. Let's try both options. Picture frame, we got this X-like, and we just put picture in. That's nice. We can use this zoom in and out option to reposition everything. Let's undo. Hope you still remember the shortcut. Command or Control Z. This is normal shape. I right click on it. This time I will convert this shape into text frame. I still got two columns, so I would change that back to one column. We can fill this with a text. And now we got the text inside this heart shape. All of the text properties are still here, so we can modify that as you please. So any shape can be turned into text frame or picture frame. Speaking of pictures, is one more tool on the list here for placing images. Place tool. And this will put the whole image in. Same as I did before, I just drag and drop the image. There is next tool called Data Merge Layout tool. This tool allows us to get the data from outside the program as well. So if you're preparing, let's say, business cards, you got this Excel file with all of the names, phone numbers, we can link to that and kind of get all of that into your design and generate business card for every employee without doing this manually. As you can guess, it's a bit advanced feature of the program, so I will not go deep into that today in this quick start video. Let's test the next tool. The next tool is called crop tool. That's a vector crop tool, so we need a vector object. What is a vector object? It's something that we can draw with the pen tool or a shape. So this, although we drew before, that's a vector shape. If I select this vector crop tool, I can crop part of the shape. So we can see only half of it, for example. There's a gradient tool. If you want to put gradient, you need a container for it. Take a look. I tried to put gradient and nothing is happening. So for example, I grab this shape we drew before. All right, now I grab the gradient tool and now I got container for this gradient. So the gradient will appear inside that shape. We can customize colors. We can also customize the type of the gradient we need. It's linear by default, but it can be also elliptical, circle-based one. Radial here, like a circle. All right, so that's how you can apply gradients. Don't forget to draw a shape to work as the container for your gradient. Below, there's a transparency tool. We can apply it on this shape as well, and it will be semi-transparent, kind of vanishing, disappearing. Actually, nice effect here, huh? We could drag it across the page. Keep in mind, if this one is like that at the top of the page, it will be covering the shapes below. How can we reorder that? We can click on that gradient or any other object and use rearrange panel at the top. We can move it to the back. We can move it to the front. Or you can just simply drag and drop this here in the layer section. In the layer you can see objects, right? So you can decide precisely, oh, why I need this behind this object. So that's how you can reorder your objects in your page. We almost done with the tool panel on the left. Only few tools left. That was the transparency. And then we got two pickers. One is for picking colors and one is for picking styles. Picking colors, that's simple. You can click on the object, use the color picker, and we can pick the color from this image here. By the way, there's also a quick color picker. In the color section on the right, you may notice that. You can click and hold this one. You can pick the color, and it's here. Let's try again. Click and hold, pick this sky. It's here, this little circle. It's inside that picker. I didn't use it yet. Then when I on this object, I can click on it and I use that. That's a quick picker tool. Why it's here? So you don't need to switch and use the picker tool every time you need a color. That's just a little shortcut. All right, and there's one more picker tool, the blue one, called Style Picker Tool. To try to use that, we need to create two objects, one with the style and one without. Let's clean up a bit by deleting those unnecessary objects. Now I will draw two shapes. I got triangle, and this one will be rotated 180 like that. Triangle on the right, we're going to apply some styles to it. How we can do that? In your layer section on the right, click FX here, layer effects. From here we can apply some interesting effects. Everything from 3D, outlines, gradients. If you ever use Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, it will be very similar box. Even blur is here, so that's an unusual one. We can even blur using the style. All right, so let's add shadow. We can change direction of that shadow. And let's add a bit of inner glow. Just like that, we can change the blend mode. All right, so we apply a certain style on that object. Now I want to move this style to this one, so I click on this new object, click on the style picker tool, and I click on that style. Here it is, we got the same style on the second object without recreating this by hand. Keep in mind, now my style picker is loaded with that style, so I can kind of keep applying this style on next object if I like, or I can unload it and use it again. All right, the next tool, the little hand here, that's the pan tool, view tool that I showed you before. But before that, I didn't click it from the list, right? As you may remember, you can use that tool just by pressing and holding the spacebar. So you don't need to ever pick it from the tool panel. And there's a zoom tool that I also never use because, as you may remember, I like to zoom with the shortcut. So Command plus, Command minus. Below that, you got active color and active stroke. And that's our tool list on the left. But is it really? The killer feature of this software is called Studio Link. Studio Link can link you to any other tool from the family of software. So if you own Affinity Designer and Affinity Photo, you can link and use those tools directly in Publisher without opening another software. Keep in mind, you need to install the program on your PC. You cannot use that if you purchase only the license only for the Publisher, all right? But if you are a happy owner of Affinity Designer and you need any designer tool now, take a look. At the top we got personas. By default we are in Publisher persona, but I can switch to Designer persona, and now I got access to the tool panel from Affinity Designer. If you want to learn more about Affinity Designer tools, I got the similar quick start video for that software as well. But anyhow, now I can access any tool that is in Designer but is actually missing in publisher like this pen tool that we just used to draw this line. I can literally use the shape builder tool, one of the most powerful tools in Designer, from here, from publisher. Take a look. We can unite those three shapes. We can delete this part. We're using shape builder tool within inside the Affinity Publisher. So keep in mind, all of that is kind of borrowing the power, the tools from different software. And it's the very same thing with the next persona called Photo Persona. Now we are borrowing all of the tools from Affinity Photo. So to unleash the full potential of Affinity Publisher, you will need all three programs, all right? As this is the quick start for the publisher, today I'm going to focus on the publisher native tools, but please keep in mind that's the killer feature of this software, that we can access the tools from all three programs within publisher itself. All right, let's go back to publisher persona. We already learned about all of the default tools in the publisher persona. You also know that you can trigger different workspaces using a designer persona or photo persona, but you need to own the license for those two programs as well. You cannot trigger that without the software installed on your machine. What else is here? There's also a contextual menu just below personas, and this menu also will change with the tool. So every time I switch to different tools, this menu is a bit different per tool, so keep that in mind. Sometimes you may watch a tutorial and you see this menu is different on the tutorial and you wonder why. Double check which tool is selected in your case. Alright, on the right side here you may notice this little magnet icon. That's for snapping. You can switch this off or on. Now it's pressed down and I can also modify what will snap to what. I like to snap to geometry as well, so I would turn it on right now. And you may notice when I move my objects around, I got those smart guides, some temporary guides like this red line now. It's snapping to the center of the page. But I can also snap to different elements of existing objects, like now. Snapping to that object edge and this line. So turning on snapping is really handy. Then we can use options to move stuff backwards and forwards as I show you already, but I prefer to move objects in the layer panel. If you need to align multiple objects, there's option for that as well. So you know what? Let's draw several objects and try to align them nicely using the alignment panel next. I draw several objects. We got 4 different circles of different sizes. If you want to change the color of the shape, as I showed before, use the wheel here. Right now I'm changing the color of the stroke around. That's this ring icon. You can click on the fill color here. We can change that color as well, and we can also click on the arrow directly to flip those two colors. Like that. Alright, let's recolor them a bit. Cool, now we're going to select them all. Let's open up alignment panel. As you can see, we can align horizontally and vertically. There's also option for spacing here. So let's align them vertically. Nice, but space horizontally. And now we got exactly same distances between them. So that's handy. Let's try to do something similar in the vertical manner. I will delete this gradient here. Alright, so I select that. Alignment. This time we can align to the center like that. To the left, to the right. But let's space it up vertically. Alright, I was aligning to the selection bounds, but you can change that and align to the page as well. In this case, you will be aligning to the page center. Alright, so that's the alignment panel for you. What else here? We can flip the shape. I cannot show you that on the circle because the circle flipped look exactly the same. So you know what? Let's make a group. So I will move this here. I'm making a duplicate. Next, I'm going to group that. So I will right click in my layer panel and make a group. I will copy this whole group, Command C, Command V, and I will put it here below, and I will group it once more so I can have those two groups in even bigger group. All right, now let's try to flip it horizontally, vertically. You can also rotate that anti-clockwise 90 degrees and clockwise as well. All right, we cover all of the important features in the top panel as well. Let's move to the right side. By default, you will see your colors here, and there is a color wheel. If you don't like the wheel, you can change that. Click on the hamburger menu here. Use the slider or the box, whatever you like. You like the box? Here it is. There's some pre-made swatches, stroke properties for the lines that are around the shapes. Below that, you will see your layers, and there are some additional panels, like in my case, for character, paragraph, and text styles. Keep in mind, all of those panels can be customized. If I pull it out, I got this panel floating now and can even stick it to new location on this side. Why not? I can close it completely and the panel is gone. How to reopen a studio panel? Go to Window at the top. You can see the panels that are active right now, the check mark. If you want to turn on the panel, just click on it. And here it is, the panel snap here automatically. You can move the location to customize it. Here at the bottom, you got three more panels. You got transform, you got navigator that I never use, so I'll get rid of that. As you remember, drag out, switch off. There's a history when you can undo multiple times very quickly, very handy. All right, seems like we cover all of the basics, but I still need to show you how the text can interact with shapes and images, because that's a very common design challenge while you're designing a multi-page publication. So let me just put some text first. Okay, here we are. We got three very common objects here. One is a text frame. As you remember, we can modify that, and the text should flow. Then there's a vector shape and also an image in the proper image frame. If I move my vector shape or image, the text will stay there. If I try to move this on the layer panel, the text will be simply above it. So that's one way of doing that, but some of you may want the text to warp around the shape. And the common misconception is where to set up this property. If I click on the text, head to the top here, I can see a text warping settings. By default, it's none. We can jump, make a square warp or tight one. Let's try the tight one from both sides. Close. Now I try to move this object in and nothing happens. And that's why people get confused. So the place we need to set up the warp is not the text itself. It's the object we want to warp the text around. So I need to set up text warping for this shape. So very same button at the top. Let's set up warping for this shape to tight and try again. And now the text is moving away from my shape. So that's how you can set up text warping. Don't set this up on the text itself. Set this on the object you want to warp the text around. If I move this in, nothing happens because I need to set up this for this object as well. Let's make a jump warp here. Take a look. Now the text is jumping down, making the space for the illustration, for the image. That's nice for this column design. Perfect. Move it around. All work just fine. While talking about text warping, I will show you a very handy trick. I like to call it invisible warping. So sometimes you got some backdrop illustration. So let's switch off warping on this guy. So this will be kind of the backdrop illustration for us right now. So let's say we got this backdrop illustration on this page, just like that. And I want the text to kind of still be visible on the sky here. All right. So how can we do something like that? Before I show you, let's just simply fade away this image here. As you can see, I could grab a transparency tool, and if I try to use that, nothing's happen because this is not a vector object. Let's just undo that and instead head to the layer section on the right, and there's option for masking layers. So click mask layer. It will show this square next to the layer. Now I can be on the layer, on the mask, on the layer, on the mask. The mask is white, but we want to switch this mask to be a gradient between white and black, fading away. White, it's the shown part of the image. Black will be the hidden one. So if you want to smooth fade away, let's use the gradient, So gradient tool, I'm on the mask layer, and now I'm going from the white to gray. So that's not strong enough. Let's go from the white to black. And with mask like that, the sky is fading away to this white paper. That's interesting effect, right? We could make this shorter like that, but that's not what I want. I want a very nice, very precise text warp around this tower here. So how can we do that? Let's draw a vector shape using pen tool. So I'm going to draw a shape that I will use for warping the text. You don't need to be very precise with this kind of shape. We can put a color in, and here's the shape, alright? If you want to modify the shape, use the node tool as I showed you before. Cool. Now let's set up the warp settings for this shape, right? So go to the top, make it tight. And now the text is escaping this green shape. But keep in mind, we can make this shape completely transparent. So you can reduce opacity using this slider up to 0. And this shape is still there. And the text is reacting to that invisible shape. But nobody will see it. And that's how you can make those interesting warps like around the existing backdrop picture. Take a look. We got nice text. There's some image at the bottom, and the text is going around the tower in this image. We also blur the sky of that image to the page. So that's kind of how we can blend several different tools together for nice effects in your publication. Alright, I think we cover all of the basics in this quick start video. Now you are ready to start using the great software called Affinity Publisher. We've been using version 2 all this time, and I hope you can now explore some of the features by yourself. Keep in mind, that's just the beginning of your journey, so feel free to come back here later and watch some other tutorials that go a bit more into some details of certain tools and features of the program. Thank you for learning with me today, and I will see you in my next tutorial. Bye!